In November 1948, Jeffrey Orbell set out into the Murchison Mountains to confirm the extinction of the takahē. For the past 50 years, no one had seen the bird. Only hunters' rumors spoke of a large blue-green creature in the hills. Instead, Orbell found living takahē. But there was a problem. Only 80 to 500 birds remained in the wild, all on a single mountain range. Their numbers were falling, and by 1981, just 118 individuals survived. And then New Zealand tried something that for most species would already have been impossible. Between 1849 and 1898, exactly 4 takahē were found in New Zealand, living or dead, 4 individuals over 50 years. After 1898, nothing. The species was declared extinct, but that was a European verdict. For the Ngai Tahu people, who inhabit the South Island, the takahē had never definitively disappeared. Their ancestors had hunted the bird in the valleys beyond Lake Teanau as recently as the mid-19th century and had passed knowledge of it from generation to generation. Today, Ngai Tahu regard the takahē as their treasure and are officially kaitiaki, guardians of the bird, alongside the Department of Conservation. Extinct is a word that in nature never implies complete certainty. Hunters spoke of a large blue-green bird that runs like a horse and cannot fly. Surveyors mentioned unusual giant rails on the alpine pastures. One party of sailors chased a bird the size of a goose for several minutes and never caught it. All these accounts were being collected by one man. On the wall of his cottage in Teanau hung a map, and on it, in pencil, he marked every report. Year by year, the dots gathered in one place. The Murchison Mountains, west of Lake Teanau. Jeffrey Orbell was a doctor, an ear, nose, and throat specialist from Invercargill, but the takahē had pursued him since childhood. He was 10 or 11 when he found a photograph in his mother's album, a bird in a glass case in the Otago Museum. His mother explained that the creature was supposedly extinct. The boy was stopped by the word supposedly. He memorized the footprints recorded in the caption beneath the mounted specimen. He memorized the fact that the bird had lived in subalpine tussock above 1,000 meters. More than 30 years later, he lay on a slope among the snow grasses of the Murchison Mountains and heard 2 long, deep calls. But between childhood and that hillside lay decades. Orbell graduated from medical school in 1934, trained at eye clinics in London and Melbourne, then opened a practice in Invercargill. He founded the New Zealand Deerstalkers Association and became its first president. Somewhere between expeditions, he bought a cottage in Teanau, a small town on the edge of Fiordland beside the lake. On the cottage wall, he hung his map. For years, he plotted onto it every confirmed and unconfirmed takahē sighting. Hunters, surveyors, tourists who had seen a large blue-green bird. One party of sailors had chased such a bird and described it as the size of a goose with the speed of a horse. Others spoke of giant flightless rails, very good eating. Orbell gradually saw a pattern no one before him had noticed. All the sightings occurred below the tree line, and predominantly in years of heavy snowfall. This meant the bird lived higher up, in the subalpine tussock, descending below the snow line only when winter forced it down. No one had previously searched for takahē on the grassy summits, and that, he concluded, was where the bird might be hiding. The Murchison Mountains were the only place on the map where the dots formed a cluster. On every expedition into the high country, and there were dozens, he searched for tracks. Nothing. By 1945, he had narrowed the search to a specific location. The Murchison Mountains, a rugged range on the western shore of Lake Teanau, were almost unexplored and difficult to access. Every dot on his map converged there. In April 1948, he went in with Rex Watson and Neil McCrosty, ostensibly on a hunting trip, but the real purpose was something else. He was not alone. Another group was also preparing its own expedition into the Murchison Mountains. 19th of November, 1948, Invercargill. 4 people left the city at 3:30 in the morning. They boarded the vessel Takatum before dawn and set out for Teanau. The following day, November 20th, they climbed into the valley. The approach took several hours. It was a hard ascent through mountain terrain. At some point, they found themselves in a snowgrass clearing in the takahē Valley, and then the birds appeared. Orbell later wrote that the coloring was truly wonderful, with a blood-red bill, legs and feet, a dark blue head and breast, a turquoise back, lower parts blue, and finally tail feathers in olive green. He held his cine camera and filmed. 2 birds walked across the clearing, paying no attention to the humans. He wrote afterward that when he stood up, the birds were no more alarmed than domestic fowls, and moved only a few steps into the snow grass, where a net was quietly drawn around them. The takahē had evolved in New Zealand over millions of years without terrestrial predators. A flightless bird had no reason to fear anything that moved on the ground. It simply did not know it was supposed to run from a human. It was precisely this trust, a product of millions of years of isolation, that had nearly destroyed the species. Maori hunted takahē with dogs, and the bird did not flee. The first European sealers caught one with their bare hands and ate it for supper, noting that the meat was very good. A dog named Ruff caught the 4th known specimen in 1898. The bird had not reacted in time. Now that same trust allowed 4 people to walk up close and throw a net. Joan Telfer, Rex Watson's companion, was the first to reach the bird. She recalled, "I looked down and there was the bird. I crouched and grabbed it. I was nearly strangling it, but I wasn't gonna let go. It was 9:30 in the morning. 2 birds, photographed and released. The photographs ran on front pages in dozens of countries. The bird that did not exist existed." The first shock came from the arithmetic. Scientists who arrived after Orbell conducted a count. Approximately 80 to 500 individuals. The middle estimate was somewhere around 250 to 400. The entire population was on a single mountain range in a single alpine valley across an area of roughly 500 square kilometers. This meant that one natural disaster, one disease, or one failure of the tussock and the bird would genuinely be extinct. This time for good. The threats were numerous. Red deer, introduced from Britain in the 19th century, ate the same tussock the takahē depended on. Stoats attacked nests. Winters were growing harsher. The Murchison Mountains were closed to visitors in 1949. Immediately, the entire valley became a protected zone. But isolation alone was not enough. In 1981, another census was conducted. The result was 118 individuals. That was the entire known population of takahē on the planet, 118 birds. Then someone asked a question that sounded absurd. What if the birds were moved to islands? New Zealand is surrounded by dozens of small islands. Several of them had been completely cleared of invasive predators, rats, stoats, and weasels, as far back as the 1960s and 70s. These islands had become natural sanctuaries: Tiritiri Matangi, Kapiti, Mana, Te Hoiere. In the 1980s and 90s, several dozen takahē were transferred there from the Murchison Mountains, not to remove them from the mainland, but to create a backup population. If something happened in Murchison, the bird would not disappear. The islands worked. Without predators, the takahē began breeding faster. In parallel, another program was launched on the mainland. Scientists encountered a biological detail that could be turned to advantage. Takahē lay 2 eggs, but almost always raise only 1 chick. In the wild, the second egg typically perishes. This meant every nest contained 1 egg that could be taken without harming the pair. Rangers began making rounds of nests and collecting the second eggs, bringing them to the Burwood Center, opened in 1985 near Te Anau. There, the eggs were artificially incubated in brooders painted the red color of tussock, fitted with heat lamps and speakers that played the sounds of adult takahē. Chicks were fed every 25 minutes. Chicks imprint on the first image they see after hatching and regard it as their parent. If they had imprinted on a human, they would have grown up unable to survive in the wild. So rangers fed them using puppets, a gloved hand shaped to resemble the head of an adult takahē. Over 25 years, more than 400 takahē passed through this program. They survived well. They returned to the wild. The population grew. And then something unexpected came to light. Birds raised with puppets survived successfully in the wild. But when they began nesting themselves, something went wrong. They were significantly worse parents than birds raised by their own parents. They did not know how to incubate eggs or feed chicks. All of this a mother should have taught them, but the mother had been a blue glove with a wooden beak. The program tripled a chick's chances of surviving the rearing stage, but every such chick became an adult bird that could not pass those skills on. The program was saving one generation and undermining the next. There was another problem that was not discussed publicly. 118 birds is a catastrophically small gene pool. The population is so limited that without intervention, it inevitably moves toward inbreeding, mating between related individuals that with each generation weakens immune systems, reduces chick survival, and diminishes reproductive capacity. Rangers began working like chess players. They know the genetic lineage of every bird and ensure that birds from the same family do not end up paired together. When an island or sanctuary risks becoming too closely related, birds are moved from island to island, from mainland to island, from one sanctuary to another. All 18 locations in the program are treated as a single metapopulation. A takahē living on Kapiti is genetically connected to a bird in Murchison because someone once carried an egg to another shore. There is a moment in this story that is rarely told in full. In the Murchison Mountains, southern beach masts occur. Every few decades, the beach produces what is called a heavy seed fall, an enormous quantity of seeds. Seeds mean food. Food means a population explosion in rats. Rats mean a population explosion in stoats, which feed on rats. Then the rats disappear when the seed crop is exhausted. The stoats turn to other prey, to takahē. In 2007, stoats killed 40% of all wild takahē in the Murchison Mountains. In a single season, the population at the bird's primary stronghold was halved. The recovery program took nearly 10 years to claw back those losses. In 2019, another heavy beach mast occurred. Another wave of stoats followed. This time, the losses were somewhat smaller because an extensive trap network across the entire range had made a difference. But around 10% of Fiordland's wild population died that year too. Here's the paradox. The very nature being protected for the sake of the takahē periodically becomes a machine of destruction. The beech forest that gives the birds shelter every few decades feeds an army of their killers. Traps, poisons, helicopters, round-the-clock monitoring, and still, every heavy mast is a roll of the dice. There is no solution that closes this problem permanently. In 2016, the New Zealand government officially declared its target. By 2050, every part of the country will be completely cleared of rats, stoats, and possums. If that is achieved, stoats in Murchison will disappear. The takahē will, for the first time in millions of years, live on the mainland without terrestrial predators. In 2016, the takahē's status was changed from critically endangered to simply endangered, for the first time since the rediscovery of 1948. This is the longest species conservation program in New Zealand's history, possibly in the world. In 2018, takahē were returned to Kahurangi National Park 70 years after the discovery, and the birds settled in a new wild location for the first time. As of October 2023, approximately 500 takahē exist. Of these, 55% live in the wild, compared to 32% in 2017. 18 island and mainland sanctuaries, a genetic material preservation program, an annual census, artificial incubation and chick rearing systems. There are children in New Zealand today who can visit Tiritiri Matangi and feed takahē from their hands. A bird declared extinct twice walks among tourists with the composure of a drowsy hen. That composure is the same quality that nearly destroyed the species. A bird that evolved without predators never learned to flee, and because of that, it ended up in the hands of sealers, under the teeth of dogs, under the claws of stoats. Now that same composure has made it the symbol of a program that did not exist before 1948. Orbell discovered not just a bird, he discovered a problem that New Zealand is still solving today. Jeffrey died in 2007. He was 98. The same year, stoats destroyed half the wild takahē in the Murchison Mountains. He lived to see 118 become 300, but not to see 500. The word supposedly spoken by his mother in the Otago Museum when he was 10 turned out to be more precise than any scientific declaration of extinction.